all very welcome back to Curiosity Season 2, where this season we looked at the technology pillars from Season 1 and incorporated them with members of the Oracle startup ecosystem. This is our fifth and final episode of the season, where we're going to be looking at all things security and GDPR. However, we have a very exciting episode for you all today. Rather than start turning to the community, considering the current health climate that we're in, I'm going to bring you behind the scenes. So for each episode, you would have heard me introduce you to our digital advocates. These are the people who have really brought this podcast to life and made me, the not so glamorous assistant, sound a lot more intelligent than what I am. They are going to be our thought leaders for this episode. But before we do start, I'm going to go to Hugh Gallagher, who is our digital advocate about all things security and GDPR. Hugh, to the person on the street, what does it all mean?
Connor, thanks for the lovely introduction there. So we're looking at security. Now, you could go with two schools of thought here with security. It's a physical thing, or it's a concept. I prefer to go down the route of it's a concept. It's almost like a feeling. It's just how you feel about what's in place. Like security itself is only as good as its weakest point. The same you might say about like a chain link fence, that it's only as strong as the weakest link. Security, whether it's cyber or physical for home protection or whatever, it'll only be as good as the weakest part of it. So say you have a lock on your front door, it's only as strong as the material it's made of. The same goes for cybersecurity. It'll only be good as long as it's more complex than the wiliest hacker out there.
So, before we do start, just to give ourselves a very quick reminder of who we have joining us today. So, if you catch your mind back to episode 1, we had Grace Byers, who brought us through data analytics, and we moved on to Ryan Lynch for episode 2, who brought us through all things AI. We've Kate Lloyd standing in for episode 3 who was Andre, who brought us through infrastructure as a service, Mark Ryan most recently through our blockchain episode, and Hugh, who is security and GDPR. Hugh, I think I'm going to start with you and work backward, because we know, I suppose, GDPR respectively, since that was the closest that we've been able to put our hand on when we think from security and IT. We know it's a very, very broad umbrella. So it would not be unusual that when we look at the previous episodes and previous topics, how applicable it is. And the level of importance doesn't change among each topic. But you're talking about strength of materials and kind of, I suppose, this concept of having that strong front, that strong security front. Are we still within a climate where organizations or systems are not prepared for cyber attacks?
Well, it does vary kind of where you are in what sort of business sector you're in, because a lot of people, especially, I don't want to sound too ageist here, but especially with older CEOs, older board members, they might not think that their company is as vulnerable, or they might not think that they are as big a target for attack. So they wouldn't put as many resources as they should into security. And of course, you'll also have people who their security might just be a password, and it might be a very simple password to guess. They might not kind of conform to the standards or the suggestions that people have for what would make a strong password. So it is something that a lot of more companies now are prepared for cyber attacks, but not all companies would be as prepared as, I personally anyway, from my own opinion, that they wouldn't be as prepared as they should be.
And if we look at GDPR in particular, right, what my taking from GDPR as a consumer at the time was to really give me back control of my data. So I know that there are multiple organizations which hold and have harvested my data in the past, but it still give me a lot of control. Ethically, for those who think that they're not as vulnerable, I suppose from a security perspective, they still have a duty here toward the customers whose data they manage. Would I be fair in saying that?
Oh, very fair in saying that. It's it is a big issue. They do have that responsibility there to be careful of their customers, their consumers of whatever product they have or whatever service they're offering, which I think is what is kind of pulling up a lot of companies on their practices on how they're operating, because there are big charges if you are in violation of GDPR in whatever way you're handling customer data. So you are completely correct in saying that it is very important, and it is something that is pulling up a lot of companies now.
Very interesting. Now, I know if we cast our mind just to episode 4, where we looked at all things blockchain, to me, security and it blockchain is security. And Mark, I know that you had mentioned at the start of that episode how it's non-changeable. I may not use the correct term here, but non-changeable blocks, which basically cannot be altered among the chain. Security, blockchain, it is, in essence, you cannot deny the one thing, is it not?
Hi, Connor. Yeah, you're absolutely right there. The whole essence of the blockchain is that it is unchangeable, it's immutable. And it goes hand in hand with security, because the provenance of data is really the most important thing when you're talking about security. You want to make sure that you can trust the data, where it's coming from, and that it hasn't been changed or altered. To use the kind of the personal security analogy, blockchain is a bit like a home security system for your house, in terms of the change in technology that's occurred over the last few years. It's going from a physical lock to a digital lock, if you like. And that's a bit of a game changer for security. We are going to see this a lot more over the next coming years, particularly in financial services, but moving into other areas as well. Data security is something that is going to become more and more important for lots and lots of different businesses. And blockchain is going to facilitate that for a lot of people.
And that's the data element of it. But I suppose if we look, and Mark, I will come back to you, if we look to episode 3 even, and Kate, I'll jump to you for a moment since Andre's not with us. It's the physical security of devices, the issues around that, and when we start thinking more so of infrastructure as a service, where do we sit with security in particular?
So yeah, it does. As well as making sure your devices are secured with any antiviruses, you need to watch who has physical access to them. So one of the biggest examples, and definitely the one that affects the most affects the public, is electronic voting. So back in 2017, employees of the Hong Kong Registration and Electoral Office lost 2 laptops, which contained the personal details of all 3.7 million people who are registered to vote in that city.
Whoa. So it's if we weren't sure or had any doubts, I suppose it's a vulnerability from an infrastructure perspective. Now, I suppose I love to keep my nose in all things political. I'd be quite nosy in that space. So on the topic of voting, didn't the US have an issue with electronic voting in the past as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So there was actually so many. In 2012 in Washington, they decided to run a mock election and invited the public to try and break into it. A group of PhD students, I believe, and some staff from the University of Michigan did exactly that. And in 48 hours, they'd found a way to rig the election, with officials not realizing anything was wrong until they found a little musical calling card in the system. So if they hadn't deliberately left that to be found, no one would have known the system was rigged. So it just meant that their election systems for the presidential elections in 2016 were actually worse in terms of security. They were a bunch of outdated, mismatching machines with known vulnerabilities. So the best advice given to some of the people in charge of all these machines is probably don't connect these to the internet. All issues caused by poor infrastructure and implementation, which led to huge security flaws.
That's fantastic, Kate. It's actually, I know that we could say, right, do not connect them. But if I cast my mind back to episode 2, where Ryan Lynch brought us through the fantastic world of AI, and we heard from some fantastic companies in terms of what they were doing. Ryan, bad agents, something set up like AI with detecting something within a system tell us security, AI.
Yeah, AI is something that we could be using to protect a lot of these. We can use artificial intelligence to look for things that humans would normally see, things that don't look right as to how it should go. So if you're connecting devices to networks and someone's coming in to attack that, you can have the AI constantly looking over that network, and they can spot when there's someone coming in that shouldn't be or that wouldn't normally come in, because AIs are really, really good at patterns. So they understand the usual patterns and what should be there. So when something else that stands out from that comes into play, they should be able to spot where that issue is, tell you about it, and hopefully block any issues that are coming in through that network.
So if we think from a security perspective, right, and if we think a bad agent coming in being the robber, AI is really the task force or the police force that's going after that robber. Would that be fair to say?
Absolutely. AI is there trying to be there before you to try and stop you robbing that shop or that database or that device. It's trying to be that middleman that stops you getting in. So because humans can't check out every single security threat or vulnerability that pops up because there's just so many, but a machine can. So it's hopefully going to be always there in the way of someone trying to break in.
Oh, fantastic. Now, thinking as well, it's GDPR, we think data, and that's what everyone freaked out about it. That's what everyone was quite interested in. Grace Byers, you brought us a fantastic episode in episode 1 about data analytics, and you cannot talk GDPR without really talking your topic. So talk to us from a security perspective. It's data analytics. Has it changed the landscape of it all?
Thank you, Connor. Yes, I would think that data has definitely changed the landscape in terms of security and GDPR. If you think about it, data is the pot of gold. It's what they want. It's what anyone wants when they're, hacking a system. They want to get the data. So, as we discussed before, data is simply information. In terms of a security point of view, we are talking about sensitive data. So sensitive data would be any personal data revealing any political opinions, religious beliefs, or even health-related data. Oftentimes, sensitive data is gained through unauthorized access, which would then be commonly known as hacking. Data analytics would be the process of using tools to gain insights from the data. But it is especially important in cybersecurity, as gaining security insights about attacks and faults in security systems is extremely valuable.
Fantastic. It's so funny. I'm sitting here. So we've often said offline among all of us, because we've worked quite closely over this series in particular, how my technical knowledge is very limited. I think I've simply chosen just to be the voice. But I cannot equate to one topic where security should be more prevalent or should be more of a focal point. So to me, all of the different areas that we explored across the series is crucial. So Hugh, I'm going to jump back to you for a moment. If we think security, do we need to move it beyond the IT department within any organization? That it's something that's everybody's responsibility. Is that fair to say?
It definitely is fair to say, because if you even just take a company, you'd usually have it structured that you might have one or a handful of admins who'd have, general rights across all systems, but then your CEO might want, demand, need the same level of access. And if they're not as technically savvy, they could be, I suppose, the weak point in the IT back or the security backbone of the company, and that could be the entry point that a hacker uses, or it could even be someone lower down the chain of command that has just enough rights of access that a hacker could use that to steal whatever data they're looking for. So it definitely is on everyone in a company to at least be aware of how they could be vulnerable security-wise.
So if you, for example, you're going into an organization in a brand new role that's responsible around security. We're going to leave GDPR aside for a moment, but just from security perspective, what are the first couple of areas that you're going to start examining to see how security savvy this organization actually is?
I suppose one of I often see it as a bit of a joke online that you might send out, an email or put up a flyer somewhere asking people to put down their passwords so that you can check if they're secure enough. And if people do, that shows bad practice immediately, because you should never give out a password that you have, that you need, that's necessary for a system. So I suppose that would be one of the first parts of call, to make sure that people are aware to have a secure password and to keep it safe, to keep it only known to them. After that, you'd want to look at, again, what level of access everyone has. Make sure that they have just enough access to do their job. Make sure they don't have more than they need, because if they let something slip, they could be the point that causes the company to crumble, or at least the point where the leak will start.
And if we think, I suppose, and it may have no relevance at all, but if we're looking at, say, somebody sitting down looking at funny cat videos or something within their business, okay, do we need to have a cause for concern of those external forces coming into the business? That could there be a bad agent hiding behind something which I suppose has become so day-to-day business practice for us at this point in time?
It is something to always keep it to the forefront of your mind. There could easily be a bad agent hidden among something like that, something as mundane as a funny cat video. But a lot of that comes down to, before you click on a link, to look at it, see, does it look dubious? If it does, maybe don't click on it. But also to make sure that whoever is in charge of the network security for your company, make sure that they're looking at the firewall, what sort of a setup they have, and make sure that if it can detect something dubious, that it'll block it, it won't allow access to it. But yes, that is something that does also fall onto the shoulders of whoever is working there, that they're aware that, commonly it'll be called phishing, that someone would try and have some sort of a phishing scam to steal data by pretending to be someone else, something else, some other sort of a service, and getting in using a mask, basically.
So, I have to be very honest, okay? So I presented, this is the 5th episode of this series. It's not the most sexiest of topics compared to what we've seen in the past. How can we make security that bit more fun within an organization, since it's so crucial?
That is a very good question, and you're right. It isn't, I suppose, the sexiest of topics. It isn't. It is something that usually comes with a lot of, read through these steps, follow steps A through Z, possibly. Make sure you're complying with everything. Don't do this. Don't do that. But I know I wouldn't have any names off the top of my head, but I know there are places out there that are trying to gamify it a little bit to make it that bit more engaging, to know what to avoid, what to do. But it does all come down to, it's still not the sexiest of things, but it is just coming down to making sure that everyone's informed on how they should act when they're looking at what they do online.
Yeah, because I suppose, Mark, if we took something like, the concept of blockchain, right? Can we remove this concept of we're building an IKEA-based manual of following a security process? And you had mentioned about the whole gamification process, but ensuring that, I suppose, every part, that we know that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, and using blockchain to ensure that we're really crystal clear and concrete in terms of what we're trying to achieve.
So it's interesting that you talk about, data security in itself maybe is not particularly sexy, but what is interesting and sexy is the kind of things that security enables. So we spend most of our lives on the internet these days, and when we're able to have this conversation now, even though things have shut down around us, that we're still able to business goes on and life goes on. But that's all enabled by security. So it's not just a case of that, we have to do the boring 2s and 3s and tick the boxes. That security enables us to do exciting things. And blockchain is another kind of step in that, because it enables opportunities that we might not be able to get in other circumstances. There was an analogy I heard recently. A guy said, if your car is low on petrol, you don't have time to go fill it up yourself, but you're not going to hand over the keys to a stranger on the street, even though he might be delighted to go and fill up your car for a few quid. On the gig economy is a big thing these days. Maybe there's loads of people who'd love to fill up your car and drive it back to your house for you, or back to your work, but you wouldn't do that because you don't trust them. There's no sense of security with a stranger. But if you kind of transform that into a digital transaction, blockchain can actually facilitate that because it enables that sort of security that you can't get. It's totally, as we said earlier, it's immutable. It's something that the technology allows you to trust completely. So a bad actor can't involve themselves in a blockchain transaction and take the car for a joyride or break it up for parts or drive it into the river. You know, when a security protocol like that gives you peace of mind to actually engage in transactions, and it opens up a whole new world in terms of what you can achieve, what you can do with things.
Fantastic. It's funny because in my not technical mind, I keep going automatically to Ryan Lynch, and I keep thinking of this kind of Pac-Man scenario of AI and this bad agent going around some network and us trying to catch it. So Ryan, I think out of any episode that we explored, yours will be the episode where we can really take a product pillar and make it a lot more exciting for non-technical people. How would you see AI playing or helping us to make security that bit more appealing within the business?
I mean, I love your analogy, and what's funnier is that it's actually not wrong. That's essentially what an AI does going around a network trying to block people and catch them. It finds them around, it chases them around, it stops them before they get anywhere they shouldn't. So I really like that analogy for it. But what an AI can do for a business is, instead of leaving so much of that security and that trust in all of the employees, instead of them needing to look out for it all the time, you can leave a lot of it to this artificial intelligence, to these machines, because over time they find all these patterns and they can take away a lot of these, a lot of the different practices and best practices you need to do with an employee and do it itself. So in terms of keeping your network secure and finding out what devices are connected, your AI can keep an eye on that so that not all of your employees don't have to make sure, okay, is this network okay? You can have an AI that's there and ready and is able to stop that device connecting if it's not a secure network. So as it's just, instead of leaving everything to an employee to figure out itself, an AI can help them along with that and make sure that it understands the patterns better than a person could. Because obviously not everyone is technical, not everyone's going to understand what makes a network secure or what makes a device secure. If you have an AI that understands it itself because it understands the patterns of what's been secure in the past and what is secure now, it's able to help an employee figure that out.
Grace, you're going to have to help me here because it's security and data analytics. I can see why we need it, but I can't see how it could help us to make it that bit more interesting. What's jumping to mind with you? Because you always do have some fantastic ideas.
So, I suppose in terms of cybersecurity and data, we are seeing quite a huge shift from the stance of protection to detection. So instead of trying to protect systems, we are actually moving towards the concept of, if we catch it early enough, it will not happen, because cybersecurity totals a lot of losses, a lot of financial losses for companies, and all these losses add up to trillions and trillions of dollars. So it's a huge loss of finance for many companies. One fact I have for you is that on average a hacker spends as many as 144 days on a network before being detected. They are very, very good at what they do, which is why we need to be better at security. So earlier we were talking about, political scandals, which are, I suppose, some of the more interesting ones, I think. In early 2018, one of the biggest data scandals happened. Cambridge Analytica were a British political consulting firm, and they harvested millions of people's Facebook profiles, and they actually used it for advertising purposes without their consent. As you can imagine, this caused a huge uproar, but they actually did this just by getting people to do personality tests. But for the personality test, you had to log into your Facebook account. So that's then how they got the data. And they were actually able to get data of these people's friends' profiles as well. So in total, they gained access to information in over 87 million Facebook accounts. So again, they used highly personalised advertising to them, which did seem to sway results in both the USA and UK political campaigns.
Interesting. So it just goes to show it's what we might necessarily regard a bad agent being external. It could really have been somebody that we opened the door to as individuals and really invited into our house. So I'm conscious that we are coming up very close in time. Ordinarily, for those of you who've been following us across the series, I do always ask the members of the Oracle startup ecosystem to share their experience with us. However, since things are slightly different today, and since we do have the brain children of the whole series with us, what I would like is to really introduce to you, the listener, a little bit more about the people who have brought Curiosity Season 2 to your phones and may have been helping you tune out during the panic or the stress or the anger or whatever you've been experiencing over the past couple of weeks, or just simply downtime. So I'm going to start with Grace. Grace, do you want to give the listener a little bit of insight into who you are and kind of what you do on a day-to-day basis, or where you're going from Curiosity Season 2?
Yes, thank you, Connor. My name is Grace, for those of you that don't know. I'm a digital advocate here at Oracle. I suppose my main work over the last 10 months of this internship has been researching and promoting new and emerging technologies, more specifically artificial intelligence in the workplace and autonomous processes, and how they can increase productivity. So really, really interesting areas. But Curiosity had given me the opportunity to look into data analytics, another area of technology that I was interested in. So I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to do many things, such as do podcasts, make videos, write articles, and really be involved in a lot of amazing projects with my team.
Yeah, so my focus over the last few months has been, it's been artificial intelligence as well, but different to Grace, because I focus more on artificial intelligence and its impact on teaching and learning. So that's kind of the area that I love focusing on. The big thing I'm working on now, and that I'm going to try to keep going over the next while, is I'm trying to create a digital teaching assistant. So it's an artificial intelligence that can integrate with online university systems like Moodle and Google Classroom. And so you'll be able to ask it questions about assignments and modules and things like that. And it's able to answer back based on what it's learned from lecturers and teaching assistants. So that's been my main focus as well, because I just really, really love the possibilities of what we can do to change educational systems with artificial intelligence. It's given us so many more possibilities.
Fantastic. Kate, we just met you. Who are you?
So I'm sure you all guessed that I'm not Andre, but I'm filling in for him today. You might have guessed. I work on the org dev team, and I help look after the grad and intern programs. And I've been keeping up with the DAs recently and admiring all their work. So delighted to be part of this this morning. So thanks so much to everyone for having me. And hopefully my my description of what infrastructure and security made a bit sense, and fingers crossed everyone got it.
I really enjoyed it, so thanks very much. It's as everyone knows who's worked with me over the series so far, I like something that I can have a viewpoint on, so it was fantastic. Thank you very much for that, Kate. It's Mark. We'll jump to yourselves. Who are you, and where do you go from Curiosity Season 2?
I suppose that's the $1 million question, isn't it, Connor? I've been researching artificial intelligence and creativity over the last couple of months here at Oracle. So basically what I find really interesting is can a computer or a machine get to a stage where it can compete with a human being in actually creating something new? Can it get involved in conjecture? Can it come up with new ideas? So at the moment I'm working on a project trying to teach a neural network how to write a song. Basically, we're trying to train it on lots of different types of music, and we're hoping that it'll give us an original piece of music that actually sounds credible. So that's my interest. And since I've started on Curiosity, I've had the opportunity to speak to some fascinating people about blockchain, which is something that I had really very little knowledge of before. But it's pretty exciting because it seems to be such a really interesting area in technology and business. So it was a great opportunity to research that and to speak to some wonderful people.
Fantastic. And Hugh, our newest, apart from Kate, but our newest person that we're meeting, who are you and what's your plan after this?
Well, myself, similar to the research undertaken by the other digital advocates, I was looking at security in databases, and I kind of shifted a little from there into security in general and looking a bit at the cloud and a few, I suppose, not necessarily big, but kind of interesting novel applications that you could use the cloud for, just to try and give people a sense of what can be done with it. But I was thrilled to be looking at security in research and also for this podcast, because it'll be where one of my passions lie in terms of IT. it's just the sector of IT that I'm hoping to end up in eventually. So that's ideally where I want to be going from CurioCity, further down the rabbit hole of security and everything that involves.
So, to everyone who has been tuning in and following us over the series, I want to say thank you very much. You got an insight into some fantastic topics thanks to our digital advocates who supported us in bringing some of the really best of breed of companies within those technology pillars to the forefront to share their experience. And I would like to thank all of our guests who joined us for this season 2. You have a true understanding of who I am, I think, from the seasons where I've been jumping in and out and trying to make relevance to my own life and my own past experience. You know who the digital advocates are, but we do have a very hard worker in the background, and that's Owen on sound. You would have heard me refer to him a lot of times. Owen looks after us, coordinates us, and ensures that we remove all of those bloopers that, trust me, I put in at a lot of the time. So a massive thank you to Owen and the wider team who've worked tirelessly in the background to bring this to the forefront. Me, I'm just going back to my day-to-day job here at Oracle, Business Development Manager. So nothing as exciting for me as what our digital advocates will be doing. But to you, all of our listeners, I want to thank you all very much for joining us for season 2 and look forward to seeing what comes from season 3 of CurioCity. Take care.